Hi everyone, it's Mrs. Bebo. In this video, we're going to take a look at story problems that involve adding rational numbers. In our first example, it says the lowest recorded elevation in the contiguous United States, 282 feet below sea level, is in Death Valley. Suppose you began a hike in the parking area near Badwater Basin at 266 feet below sea level. The stopping points of the hike and the elevation traveled are shown in the table. What is the elevation of your stopping point? So they show us in the table that we have 4 points where we've stopped, and then it tells us our change in elevation. Now, with this question, essentially we're going to start with the fact that we're at that negative 266 feet below sea level. Because again, below sea level is indicating a negative. So 266 feet below sea level is just negative 266 feet. Then we're going to go through and basically add all of these values together to figure out what elevation we stopped at. Now we have 2 positives going on here, and then the rest are negatives. And then we do have numbers that are in fraction form, and then we have some that are in decimal form. My advice would be to change those fractions into their decimal form, since these fractions are equivalent to nice terminating decimals. And so with that 26 3/5, this is the same as 26 6/10. And that negative 3.5 is the same thing as negative 3 and then in 5/10, right, 0.5. So now that we have everything in decimal form, what I suggest to my students, before we even worry about where we started in this problem, right, that negative 266 that I have written at the top there, I would go through and worry about what are my 2 negative elevations added together, and then what are the 2 positive elevations added together in this table. So starting with our negatives, if we have negative 12.5 plus this negative 3.5, our total negative change, right, our total elevation where we went down is going to be those 2 added together, negative 16. And if you want to write 0.0 at the end, you totally could. So that is my elevation where we went down, and then we have elevations where we actually went up, right? Those are our positives. So we're going to add the 26 6/10 plus the 397 3/10. So adding those 2 together, we end up with a total of 423 9/10. So that's how much we changed, again, in the positive, right? That's how much we basically went up in our elevation while on this hike. So that's the way I would suggest starting this question. Is this the only way to start this problem? No. You also could solve this problem using everything in fraction form. Again, I just know that students tend to prefer decimals, so that's how I'm going through this question. But there are multiple ways that you can approach this problem, so I do want to make sure I restate that, just because I don't want you to think that if there was a different way you were thinking about starting this question, that was necessarily wrong. This is just what I feel is the simplest way to get started. So now we have to basically add all of these values together, right? So we took care of the table. We have our positive values added together. We have our negative values added together. Now we're going to take the fact that we started at negative 266. We went down a total of negative 16 feet during this hike. And then we went up a total of 423 9/10 feet during, again, this hike. So I would go through and start with my 2 negatives, adding those together. So you can, again, think of it as just normal addition, 266 plus 16. That's going to be 282, but again, negative. So negative 282 plus this 423 9/10. And now we have different signs. And so when we have different signs, the trick is to subtract the 2 and then keep the sign of what you have more of. In this case, we do have more positives. And so when I subtract these, we're going to end up with 141 9/10 feet. So that is going to be my ending elevation for this hike. Okay, so moving on to the next example. Now with this problem, it says at the summer camp for girls, Camp Giant Tree, the chef needs to make sure there is plenty of flour available for all her recipes. She begins the month of June with 173 9/10 pounds of flour and tracks her weekly use along with the supply delivery the camp gets in the middle of the month. So how much flour does Camp Giant Tree have at the end of June? We're going to write in simplest form using a fraction, and I added on or a decimal because honestly, like, again, as long as they're equivalent to one another, either form is fine. So we'll go through and we're going to use fractions just so we can remind ourselves how fractions work. However, if you want to use decimals on this one, you are more than welcome to. All right, so one of the things we have to keep in mind is our starting amount, right, which is the 173 9/10. And I'm going to go ahead and just write this as 173, and then we have 9/10. All right, so now, again, similar to the last question, I would go through and add all my negative values together from this table, which again shows us over 4 weeks, the change in our flour amounts, and then go through and worry about adding everything together at the end, which we only have this one positive. So really we just need to figure out what's negative 32 and 3/8 plus the negative 52 and 42 hundredths, which we can go ahead and write that as negative 52 and 42 over 100, which is the same as negative 52 and 21 over 50, right? If we simplify the fraction portion of that. And then we have that negative 29 and 3/24, which that actually can be simplified because both of these can be divided by 3. And you're going to have negative 29 and 1/8. So what's really nice about this is that now that I have all my fraction forms written out as well as being reduced, I can see that week 1 and week 4 actually have the same denominator. So we can go ahead and get those two taken care of first. So if we do negative 32 and 3/8 plus this negative 29 and 1/8, again, same sign, so you're going to add like normal. 3/8 plus 1/8 is going to make 4/8. So we're going to have 4/8 off to the side. And then 32 plus 29 is going to be 61. So we're going to negative 61 and 4/8. And then this is going to be the same as negative 61 and a half. Right? 4/8 is the same as a half. So what's nice about this now is that negative 61 and a half, we're going to be adding that to, again, this negative 52 and then 21/50ths. Well, a half is not too bad to convert into a common denominator with that 50 because, again, all you have to do is multiply each of these numbers by 25. So this is going to turn into negative 61 and 25/50ths plus we have negative 52 and then 21/50ths. And now, again, same sign, so we're going to add like normal. And then we're going to end up with, again, we can add our two fraction pieces. So the 25 and the 21 is going to make 46. So we're going to have, running out of space here, writing it over here, we'll have the 46 over 50. And then we have the 61 plus 52. So that's going to be 113. So negative 113 and then 46/50ths. All right, so now that we have that information figured out from the table, and again, don't forget that we still have this 85 and a half, so let me circle that in green. So we have this number, the 173 and 9/10, and then this negative 113 and 46/50ths that we now have to combine together to figure out how much flour was left at the end of the month after those 4 weeks. So I know that 46/50ths can be reduced. I'm not reducing it on purpose because we do have to end up finding a common denominator between all 3 of these numbers that I have circled in green. So we have the 173 and 9/10 plus the 85 and a half, because again, that was a positive addition. So that's, you know, an addition in the amount of flour. So that's why it's plus 85 and a half. And then we're going to plus, but this negative, right, 113, and then the 46/50ths, which again, I know can be reduced to 23/25ths, but that's going to make it a little bit not as nice for finding a common denominator. So the 173 and 9/10 plus the 85 and a half plus this negative 113 and then 46 over 50, a common denominator between all of these is going to be 50. So we can go ahead and multiply this first fraction, both the top and bottom, by 5, and that middle one, both the top and bottom, by 25. So now we're going to have 173 and then 45/50ths plus 85 and 25/50ths. Plus, again, this negative 113 and then 46/50ths. All right, and then adding our positive values together, we're going to have that 173 plus 85, so the whole number portions is going to make a total of 258. And then the 45 and 65 is going to make 60 over 50. But I'm going to go ahead and just leave it like, oh, I'm sorry, that's 70 over 50. Let me fix that. Did not do some carrying there. So 70 over 50, and again, I'm going to leave it like that now that it's been corrected, plus this negative 113 and then the 46/50. So the reason I'm going to leave it is so that we can actually do the subtraction a little bit easier. So again, we do have to subtract these since they're different signs. So we're going to do the 258 minus the 113. So we get 145, And then we can do that 70 minus 46. And so 70 minus the 46 is going to be 24. So we have the 24 over 50. So we got 145 and then 24 50ths, which that can be simplified to 145, and then this would be 12 25ths. So if you did do this in decimal form, let me actually go back and add my label on this, so pounds. If you did do this one in decimal form, which in my opinion, I think would have been a little bit easier because you wouldn't have had to worry about finding this common denominator throughout this problem. If you did do a decimal, the alternative answer for this would be 145, and then it would be 48 hundredths of a pound. So if you did go through and try this on your own and you decided to use decimals, that's the answer you should have come up with. So hopefully that helps you out with story problems and adding rational numbers. Again, the big thing with it, just take it step by step. Make sure if you're working with fractions, you have a common denominator, and then pay attention to those negatives and positive signs. Thanks for watching.